Welcome to Identified.
I've been in the same band for 28 years now. Those guys are my brothers. It's a love-hate thing. You're really close, you're around all the time. People you may not have chosen to be in this intimate relationship with, but you are, and over time you make it work. Our drummer Taylor, who passed a couple years ago, is like the best example of that because he's lived a different kind of life than me. Like, I'm more quiet and bookish, and he's, loud and brash, Southern California surfery guy. He basically just wore me down. And then we were like the tightest guys in the band. It was like this real odd couple kind of thing. And I really came to appreciate him and love him, of course. That was an interesting relationship for me because, just having to overcome that and then learn from it too. You know what's funny? I will say this about my Foo Fighters band. There is a parallel there. My family it's more laissez-faire. You do you, I'm going to do me, pretty open. And Foo Fighters are kind of the same way. Like, we don't talk about what we do, and if there's issues within a band, they sort of resolve themselves in that kind of hands-off, laissez-faire sort of way. We'd rather deal with things that way than like explicitly. It might be one of the reasons that it's worked for me for as long as it has. I appreciate that in family.
Hello, I'm Nabil Ayers, author, music executive, and host of Identified, the podcast that delves deep into the complex world of family and identity. In this episode, my guest is Foo Fighters bassist Nate Mendel. I first met Nate in the 90s when we both lived in Tacoma, Washington. I later became obsessed with his Seattle band, Sunny Day Real Estate, and I've had a great time watching him play bass in Foo Fighters for the past 3 decades. In our conversation, Nate opens up about his childhood as one of 4 siblings, none of whom shared the same 2 parents. He discusses his unique friendship with his longtime bandmate, the late Taylor Hawkins, how their relationship developed over time, and the familial nature of the band. Nate's journey from growing up in Richland, Washington, to performing in the world's biggest rock band, to becoming a father, has defined what family means to him. Stay tuned for my conversation with Nate.
I mean, everyone's family is unique. Yeah. It can't be so self-centered as to go like, well, my family is very strange and unique. But the thing, it's sort of like the top line for my family is that there's 4 siblings and no 2 of us have the same set of parents. But we grew up just as a regular nuclear family. It wasn't an issue within the house. I don't know if it would be for other people, Right. It was like, oh, you're adopted or you have a different father. It was never a thing that we really spoke about.
What are the age differences?
We were quite large. My older brother and sister are 13 and 15 years older than me. And then I've got a younger sister who is 2 years younger than me.
So there's like a year when you were all in the house. For the math.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, my brother came back a bunch of times.
Okay.
He was always kind of around. So that was really unique. And I didn't, of course, have any awareness of that until I was, maybe 7 or 8. And my mom started, giving me a little clue as to what our family background was. I always remember, let's say I was 7.
Yeah.
And my mom was explaining that my older brother, Mark, that my father's not his father. He's like, well, I was in a relationship with a nice Jewish man. Always just, for some reason, that phrase, I don't have a terrific memory, but nice Jewish man was as far as, really, that's as far as.
Great. It's a great lead.
Yeah, right? I just took it and was like, okay, that's a thing. And just like an overview of my siblings situation. So that's Mark, my oldest brother. He's passed now a couple years ago. And then my older sister, Marianne, was the daughter from my mom's first marriage. And she was married to a Japanese man, Jofu Mishima, who was interned in the Second World War.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. Yeah. And his story is wild. So that happened, and as abysmal and horrible as that situation was. And he's passed too, so I can't ask him this interesting question myself, but he was pretty opposed to white people after that, yet still volunteered. I don't think he was conscripted to join the war effort after he was let out of the internment camp, which is just something that I just can't even wrap my...
Where was the internment camp?
It was the one in Wyoming, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So just, the story, just you've got whatever it was, 5 days or a week, and you're just leaving your house with whatever's in it.
And you knew him, though.
Yeah, I did know him. Yeah. So that marriage was complicated and ended up ending basically because Jofu couldn't really wrap his head around my mother's existing son that was not his. So that caused a lot of friction.
And then, they had a daughter together. That's your oldest.
They had a daughter together, yeah. And she was doted upon, and my brother Mark was not. Very much not. And that friction was what sort of caused their marriage to blow up.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're in Tri-Cities, Washington, this little, you know it because you're from Washington State, or at least spent a bunch of time there.
Yeah.
And we're out in the middle of the desert in this little town called Richland, which was constructed during the Second World War to build a plutonium for the bomb.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Know that?
Oh, really?
No.
So where I grew up was an interesting place because it was just a little farm community until, when did they start working on the bomb? In 40 or something? Probably 41, who knows? And the U.S. government came in, bought up all the land from the farmers, totally secretive effort. Everybody knows this now because Oppenheimer's around, but... Well, actually, I haven't seen the movie. I don't know if the plutonium section's in there. But anyways, so they bought up all the land from the farmers and constructed, tens of thousands of houses for the workers, built the town, didn't tell anybody what was going on, and built these nuclear reactors that produced the plutonium for the bomb. And it wasn't until the bombs dropped that really, I'm sure something must have gotten out. But
people figured it out.
But that's when it was like, oh, that's what we're doing. So Jofu was a nuclear scientist. I'm not exactly sure what his specialty was, but he was, everybody in the town was there to work in the nuclear field.
Right.
Yeah. And there's not a big dating pool there. This was small. Everybody works, they call it the area, if that's not like sort of creepy and Big Brother-ish enough. Yeah. So my father, my mom's second husband, also worked at the area. He was a nuclear chemist, farm boy, World War II vet. Moved there to be in the nuclear industry, and then met my mom. He wanted children. My mom was on the fence because she had already had 2 C-sections. And we're getting right into it, man.
Right.
Talking about family. I was like,
didn't think you had much to say.
No, but I got to give you the story, because it's a little different.
Yeah.
So I was produced out of this union.
And then I think, your older siblings are in their teens when you're...
Yeah, so 13 and 15.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And living at home with us. Uh-huh. And so they were babysitting me and they were just kind of looking after me. And then my parents got it into their head that I needed a playmate. So this is how it's explained to me. I never really know. I mean, like... What was that conversation?
A simple explanation.
Yeah, what was that conversation? Yeah,
and it's something to benefit you.
It could have been just that simple. Who knows? And as my mom tells it, no fucking way am I going to have a 4th C-section. So my younger sister's adopted.
That makes it more believable. Like it wasn't an accidental pregnancy. It wasn't something like you have to put an effort to adopt a child. They really did want a child to be
absolutely
I assume, to be there with you.
Yeah.
That makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. Again, it was never like my adopted sister. It's just like, wow, sister.
Where does music come into it? Were your parents musicians? Are your siblings musical? Or is it just that general community that was artistic in that way?
My mom encouraged me to play because she was a violin player when she was younger. So I picked up violin.
Oh.
And that was my first instrument.
4 strings.
4 strings. Yeah. Easy. And I loved it for a while until I discovered rock music. And then I was like, I don't know. There's the Charlie Daniels band, but that's,
That went down to George's kind of rock song.
Yeah. I remember people telling me, it's like, look.
Right, totally. I remember that too. Like, we're around the same age. And that's like, look, it's really good.
Yeah. Great song, but not going to inspire me to keep up with the violin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there must have been, I know this, but there's like a punk rock scene in Richland, right? Which makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of like started when my band started.
Yeah.
There wasn't really a lot there.
Oh, there wasn't leading up to that. Okay.
No, because it's still, it's 1983 or something on the right. So there wasn't really much there yet.
Right.
Yeah, we had to figure it out.
Right. And which band is this?
It's called Diddley Squat.
Diddley Squat. Good name.
We're in junior high. What are you going to do?
Yeah, right. That's fine. I mean, I have bands with worse names than that we won't talk about.
There's one that I'm not going to talk about because the former singer of that band is like, why you got to pad your resume with that? Like, we're not going to talk about that because the name is like literally 14-year-old kids had this as their band name is
Right.
kind of mind-blowing. Anyway, so yeah, Diddley Squat was the first band that I really did.
Are you in touch with the Diddley Squat people?
Yeah, one of the guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's cool. And that's the funny thing about bands is, I mean, I don't know how many, I've been in 4 or 5 bands in my life, and I'm still in touch with some of those people. It's just fun to stay in touch with and be friends with. Some I'm good friends with, some I'm just like, whatever on Instagram and things. But it's always interesting sort of band dynamic and who you choose to stay in touch with.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know Eric Cockery?
Yes.
He was the drummer in that band.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was.
Yeah.
Right. At your wedding, Eric got all the drummers to take a photo together. I don't know if you remember this photo. It's a really funny photo.
Yeah.
There are a lot of drummers at your wedding.
Yeah. I tend to surround myself with drummers. There's a lot around. But Eric and I are still close.
Oh, that's great. He's a great guy.
Yeah. The band that I did after that, this band called Christ on a Crutch.
Right. I know that band. I knew that band when I was, I think, in high school in Salt Lake City. I knew about Christ on a Crutch. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
We're really tight to this day. So Eric was a drummer in that band.
Oh, okay.
And Glenn and Jerry. I bet hasn't been a band for 30-something years.
Right. Wow.
But I mean, you probably know how it is. Like, you could just get a text out of the blue and it's not weird. And you're right back there.
Yeah.
You know?
Someone sends you a link from some YouTube video from a show from back then or whatever. That's what I have with my ex-bandmates. It's usually something from that time period that ignites the thread.
Yeah, exactly. I was just talking to both those guys actually the last couple of days because there's like some kind of AI generated song library that describes songs, and it was like this obscure song that this obscure punk band had done in like 1982, and it shows up there, and it's just raw. It's wrong as the day is long.
Oh no!
Like if it's
right.
It was I'm a Believer. It was they covered I'm a Believer by the Monkees. Before I was in the band, and then attribute it to Christ on a Crutch and say that other bands have covered it like the Monkees. It's just like
you wrote it in '83.
Yeah. Can't imagine why anybody would want to do that.
Yeah.
But that's out there now.
I mean, you mentioned some siblings and parents that have passed, which is terrible. Has there been much grief in your family?
Yeah. Well, my mom passed early. That was the thing that was really the toughest. Breast cancer, like mid-90s. So my father was very quiet, man. The thing that kept the family together was my mom. She was very outgoing, very, very standard dynamic. She was very outgoing and colorful, and my dad was a quiet man. So, I lost my mom, but I also worried about what would eventually come to pass, which is that because she was so much like the heartbeat of the family, that it would sort of dissipate when she passed. That was that moment. And also then I'm 26, right? So that's that moment when I think a lot of people, make the decision to decide how they're going to feel about their family and their siblings. It's not just like this thing that's thrust upon me that I grew up with and it's the water I swim in, there I breathe. It's like, I have to figure out what this is going to look like. So that was an interesting time for her to pass because I did end up doing that. And I'm like, all right, what's this going to look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Based on my relationships, as much as the fact that we share parents and the households.
And it's interesting to me, and I don't know if there's anything to this, but you have you're a group of 4 siblings and you have 4 children.
Yes.
Is that right? Is anything to that? Or is that just coincidence?
No, that's what happens with twins.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It screws with the head count.
Does it remind you of it in any way? Do you sit around and see the family and remember moments from your childhood? I mean, maybe I'm reaching here, but it's interesting to me that those numbers match.
Yeah. And I never really thought about that. No. There were, not a lot of moments where all 4 of us would be there, after I'm, 4 or 5 years old. Yeah. My brother's out of the house, my sister leaves, and then maybe that's why I to this day love Thanksgiving. I'd never thought about this till just now. It's kind of my favorite holiday. Yeah. And I don't like turkey, but whatever. I love Thanksgiving. It's great. And that was like the one time when we would all be together.
Right.
And it was great.
Yeah. So fond Thanksgiving memories.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, it's sort of a triggering holiday because a lot of people don't like the time when everyone's together for whatever reason. But it's really nice to hear that it's like a positive thing.
Yeah. I wish we would have had fights. That would have been great.
Why do you wish you would have fights?
I feel like you can't really be close to somebody. I don't know where I got this is a jackass idea. Until you've gotten so close that you've had a fight and then moved through it. But with all my relationships, my family included, and then on to my friends, like I'm just not going to get into a fight with family or friends. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
I don't know. I'm self-conscious about that.
Right. Because you need it to really get there, but you don't want it.
Yeah, like I want to be that close that I can,
Right.
I mean, if I have friends that like punched people that they love, it's like, what really?
I've never done that. Yeah. I'm not a fighter. I hate fighting, especially with people I love or people I care about. But I do know what you mean. That it's, in a way, I sort of envious of people who have done that and have gotten through it, because I haven't done that as much as.
So you know what I mean?
Like I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it doesn't make me want to try it.
I want to.
Yeah. Let's come back in a year.
Yeah.
After Thanksgiving. Now, yeah. Thanksgiving would be a shit show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but Thanksgiving, so were your childhood Thanksgiving memories like classic, like the turkey, all the things, everyone around the table?
Everyone around, yeah. Then it was great. It was the one time we were all together.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And do you do that now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Friends, family, it kind of always shifts.
Yeah.
One of the things that, I mean, Kate, but it's my wife. She's got a big Catholic family. And that was one thing that I really loved about our relationship, was that I got to be part of a much more classic, nuclear Irish Catholic family.
Wow. Yeah.
There's no religion in my life. My parents are both atheists. And so it's a bit of a curiosity. I've always kind of fascinated by that bond,
right?
That extra layer of bond that religion can bring to the equation. And I mean, they're not hugely religious people, but it's their background.
Right. Right.
All the kids went to Catholic school.
Oh, wow.
The whole thing.
Yeah, so it's like a TV show or something. Like it's like real life. Yeah.
But that's been great. Her dad's like my adopted father now. And it's really fantastic. So that kind of family cohesion and closeness that I didn't have.
Yeah.
I didn't really it wasn't like a thing that I felt like I missed, but I recognized it wasn't there. And then when I had an opportunity to have it through my in-laws, I really came to cherish it.
Wow, that's really great. What is family to you?
It's how you define it, right? Like, technically, my family is what we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, right? I'm much closer with friends, and obviously the music connection. Like, I've been in the same band for 28 years now.
28 years.
Yeah. Those guys are my brothers. In that same way, like, you've been in bands, so it's a love-hate thing. You're really close, you're around all the time. People you may not have chosen to be in this intimate relationship with, but you are. And over time, you make it work. Our drummer, Taylor, who passed a couple years ago, is like the best example of that, because he's a person that I would have actively avoided. And this is not to disparage his character. He's just lived a different kind of life than me. Like, I'm more quiet and bookish, and he's, loud and brash, Southern California surfery guy. Just like a person that I would have avoided at all costs.
Right.
And
you wouldn't have naturally been friends.
No. And he basically just wore me down. And then we were like the tightest guys in the band.
Yeah.
It was like this real odd couple kind of thing. And I really came to appreciate him and love him, of course. That was an interesting relationship for me, because, just having to overcome that and then learn from it too.
Right.
Like some of the things, like he would just... just do things that like they did absolutely no sense to me. And I had the opportunity to like call him out on it. Again, like kind of arty, more pacifist upbringing. And he's the kind of guy that would like, his friends asleep on the couch, and he would just get like a wooden spoon and a pan, just go bam, 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 right up in their face. Just, and just verbally abuse his friends. And I just remember first time I saw him do that, I was like, what are you doing? This guy is your friend.
The first time I saw him do that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was just blown away. Like, you can't interact with people like that. No, but he was like, that's how I show love.
Right. That's my love language. You always think of a band as like, well, that's whatever, 4 people or whatever it is who decided they want to be together. They made a band. But I think a lot of people don't think about it this way, where Taylor's not the first drummer. He's the drummer who ended up in the band, and you ended up in a band with him, and you had to make it work. But it wasn't 4 people who chose to do that. It's evolved over time. And I mean, most bands have evolved over time. People leave, people come and go. And not as simple as these 4 friends. And even when it is as simple as that, they don't necessarily get along.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's where the family analogy breaks down a little bit.
Right.
You know, because you can bring somebody else in and have somebody leave the band, which doesn't really happen with family so much. For me, it would be more the people that you choose that come into your orbit and are there regardless. You've got this bond that's going to, no matter what happens, is going to persevere, even if there's no fighting. You know what's funny? I will say this about my Foo Fighters band. There is a parallel there, and I've actually never thought about this till just now. You know, my family was more on like the passive-aggressive side of things. Not so much aggressive, but like it's more laissez-faire. It was a very laissez-faire family. You do you, I'm going to do me, you know, pretty open. It's not like this is how we do as a family.
And that's why there wasn't a lot of fighting, probably, because people sort of accepted that's his thing or that's her thing.
Yeah, it was pretty open that way. There wasn't like a Mendel code of conduct. Right. And Foo Fighters are kind of the same way. Like, we don't talk about what we do, and if there's issues within a band, they sort of resolve themselves in that kind of hands-off, laissez-faire sort of way.
Right.
You know, like there's an understanding. We're not going to be, we'd rather deal with things that way than like explicitly. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because of that parallel with my family, and it might be one of the reasons that it's worked for me for as long as it has. Because
you're used to that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
In family. Yeah.
And there's that interesting thing too, I think, in any relationship, a band or whatever it is, where that might get easier or sort of safer to feel over time. You've been a band for 28 years, so you know if something's maybe going wrong or something feels off. You don't need to panic. You don't need to jump in and resolve it. You know it might work out over time because you have a 28-year history of that working. Whereas in the first year, that might have been more of a panic moment when something felt like, oh, I need to do something about this. What's wrong? And I think over time, you sort of learn how to either deal with or not deal with some of those issues and know that they'll resolve.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's how it works in my experience.
Thanks for tuning in. Please consider subscribing to Identified wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And be sure to check out Identified on YouTube and identifiedpod.com, where you can watch videos from our interviews. Our executive producer is Kieron Banerji, and the show is produced by Palm Tree Island. The music for Identified is by Noella and Patricia Brennan. I'm Nabil Ayers. Thanks for tuning in.